All right, guys. So for math, if you'll remember in this first column, which hopefully you remember from our discussion, that a column goes vertical up and down. This first column is where I suggest starting for the week because it's going to give you a good fluency activity and then a review of last week's skill before we move on to our additional resources here. This week is a pretty easy week in math because we're taking what we learned last week about arrays and learning about repeated addition. And repeated addition is going to be simple single digit numbers, so it's going to feel very simple, but it's going to be our precursor to multiplication, which is what we start next week. So I know you guys will be very excited about that. It's been a while since we've practiced with subtraction, so it is a skill that honestly you guys are so excited about multiplication and you think that multiplication is so hard and it's the tough subject, but really a lot of the subtraction stuff that you guys have been doing this year is way harder than multiplication, and the blue group can tell you there are some. I mean, 5 times 2, that's super easy. It's just 5 2 times, which is 10. But subtracting 823 minus 714 to find the difference, that's challenging when you're having to regroup and do all of that work. So I would highly suggest that you practice this today. It's critical for you to know it going into third grade. They do spend some time on it, but not a whole lot. So you want to really be prepared for third grade, going in there knowing not just your addition, subtraction facts and your multiplication facts, which would be really cool to know, but you really want to impress your teachers by knowing how to add and subtract like that. It can be really challenging if you take a while off of it and you forget about it. So it's a good idea to go back and practice this page. I want you to teach your parents about what the inverse operation is and how we use it to help check ourselves. So here you're actually getting to practice subtraction and addition. So with this is the regrouping strategy with that traditional method. If you want to use your blocks and you want to draw it instead, just have a sheet of paper sitting next to you that you can practice it with. If you are remembering this strategy, great, use it. We learned that there are so many strategies, but some are going to be better for some of us and some are not. If you are thinking about this traditional method and you get stuck and you get to a place where you just don't know what to do anymore, switch back to those base 10 blocks, switch back to that drawing model to help you. When we're doing the inverse, we remember inverse simply means opposite. And so when we're thinking about the opposite, we're thinking of the opposite operations. So subtraction here, so then we're going to flip to addition. We think about those number bonds as our part wholes and how we can use those to help us. So let me show you what I mean here. There are also some really good, there's a Nearpod link on that additional resources page that you can do that's going to remind you, refresh your, my screen's bouncing back and forth, which is going to reteach you about regrouping if that's something that you need just a quick refresher on. This is going to be this is an awesome activity. What 53 is 40 and what number? So we're used to saying, oh, it's 50 and 3, but can you do it with other numbers? So it's going to go through, it's got a poem, it's just fantastic. So use this Nearpod. There's also a Nearpod for the array activity as well on rows and columns. If you didn't check that out last week, there's one here for you to go through, and it's going to go through talking about partitioning and just kind of review what we talked about last week. So let me get back to my demonstration here on solving this problem. So if you are thinking about a number bond, remember, is just where we have our whole number and we can break it down into parts. And what we'll say is, let's start with an easy one. We've got 5 and we've got a 4 over here. You know that I would need one more here. And what we would do if we were doing this as a beginner class is we would actually put one object in this circle, 4 in this circle, and slide them up to see if they total up to be that 5. Now we know that that's going to be for our beginners, right? That's for our kindergartners who are learning what numbers are and making sense of numbers. And now we're moving on to those higher numbers, those big numbers. We can still think of these numbers as being parts and totals though. right here in a subtraction problem, we do have a total. A lot of you guys are totally used to thinking about an answer in an addition problem as being the total sum. But we have a total that we're starting with in the subtraction problem, and that's 685. And excuse me for my terrible handwriting on here. It is very difficult doing this with a trackpad. So here's our total. We know from the problem that we are taking out 147. So we are subtracting or breaking that number apart. We're pulling that 147 out of our 685. Obviously, we don't want to put 685 individual objects there, so that's where those base 10 blocks would come into handy. We would actually put those on there, which if you're using Seesaw, there is under the, just for time's sake, I'm not doing it right now, shapes. Under the shapes, it does have those base 10 blocks, so you can actually put them on there, manipulate them, and remember to add a page, and then you can just have a fresh page for each problem that you're working on, and that's a great way to practice and review there as well. So here, get rid of that. We're looking at 685, and we took out 147. Well, this one was already done for me, and the answer is 538. So my other part, my other component here is that 538. So number bonds don't really help us determine the answer, but it helps us to visualize it. So here I have 685, I took out 147, and I was left with 538. If I were to take that 538 in blocks and that 147 in blocks and slide them up together, I should have a total of 685. So that's what we're going to be doing with this inverse operation. We take the number that we ended with, this 538, and we combine it back with the other part. If I combine this 538 with the 685, I'm not going to get 147, right? So when we're doing the inverse operation, we want to think about the parts that we're combining. What we do is we look at the inverse, meaning the opposite again, so subtraction here, addition here, but we also start with the bottom number and work our way back up to the top. So here we went with 538, we added 147, and it should equal 685. If we get a different answer than what this total is up here, we know we did something wrong in our subtraction. We need to go back and look at it again. So on this page, you have several subtraction problems. I would suggest doing a couple a day. You don't have to do all of them at once. You definitely can. You want to be efficient. You want to be quick with it. So if you're noticing that you have some problems with this subtraction, that just tells you, hey, okay, I need to have a little bit more practice on this. And I will share some additional resources for some subtraction pages. They're not linked in the additional resources just yet. I realized that those were missing, so I will add a couple more for you there. I think I there it is. Okay, sorry guys. So if you look on here, there are 2 YouTube videos and that Nearpod code, like I said. But if you just want some straight up subtraction practice pages, I can send you a link on that for you. If you're doing the array activity today, there's some YouTube videos there. Again, the other Nearpod code for you to review with. It is talking about partitioning into 5 rows and 2 columns, 3 rows and 7 columns. So it's a pretty quick one to do. It does ask that you draw them. You can use your this sheet here, which is called graphing paper. So you can use this and actually draw the rectangle using the right amount of squares. Makes it super easy. If you don't want to do that particular one, you can draw your arrays in shapes like this, or like last week where you had to go through and draw the rectangle. And for those of you that did this, you did this much better than me. You did actually use the shapes, which was great. You use those line tools to help you not be so wiggly like mine is here. This is going to be a great skill that you need to make sure that you're able to do besides just using the counters, but can you actually take a rectangle and partition it evenly? It can be very tricky. So make sure that you are partitioning it, because if you look here already, mine are not the same size, so that would not be a true array. So if you're looking at our activity for reviewing arrays. You've got 4 problems to come up with using that, and then write down how many squares there are in all. This is going to be kind of getting us started with that repeated addition here. You could turn these into story problems if you wanted to. You could make a video. You could make a stop motion video. There's a really cool app. It's just called Stop Motion that's for free that you can create a stop motion video. You can make a video on Seesaw. You could make a video on iMovie. You could make a Puppet Pals video, ChatterKid. There's so many cool websites out there that you can use to create story problems with. You don't have to. That today it's just can you partition these 4 problems. If you want to take it that next step further, make it a little bit more creative and fun, that's one way that you can do it. Tomorrow on our Teams meeting, we'll talk more about repeated addition and equal groups, and I hope you guys have a great day.